It was a crisp Saturday morning in October, the kind of day that felt just right for celebration. I had been planning a surprise party for my wife, Laura, for weeks. Her birthday was just around the corner, and I wanted to make it unforgettable. I envisioned her walking into a room filled with friends, laughter, and her favorite cake. Little did I know, my excitement would soon unravel into something I never expected. I had made a list of everyone I wanted to invite, mapped out the decorations, and even secured a venue, our favorite local community center. I was buzzing with ideas. Balloons, streamers, and her favorite songs playing in the background were all part of the plan. I could picture her face lighting up with joy, and it filled me with happiness. On that morning, I decided to head out to buy supplies. I left the house, eager to grab balloons and a few party favors. But as I drove to the store, my mind began to wander. I thought about how hard Laura had been working lately. She had been staying late at the office and often had weekend meetings. I wanted this party to be a reminder of how much I appreciated her, to show her that I noticed all the sacrifices she made. As I pulled into the parking lot, I felt a nagging thought at the back of my mind. It was a fleeting worry that had crossed my mind before but never lingered long. Laura had been distant lately, and I wondered if I was being too optimistic in planning this surprise. I shook it off, reminding myself of the countless good times we had shared. After picking up the decorations, I returned home, my arms full of colorful bags and boxes. I was excited to start setting up, but I noticed something strange. Laura's car was in the driveway. It wasn't unusual for her to come home early, but I was expecting her to be out with colleagues. I peeked through the window, ready to surprise her with my stash of party supplies. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. Laura was in the living room, laughing and chatting on the phone. At first, I smiled, thinking she was just enjoying a friendly conversation. But then, I noticed the way she leaned against the wall, her laughter light and airy, and a smile on her face that seemed more genuine than any I had seen in recent weeks. She looked utterly at ease. I crept closer, curiosity getting the better of me. That's when I saw him, Jake, one of her colleagues, standing in our kitchen, pouring himself a drink. My heart sank. They had been friends for years, but there was a familiarity in their interaction that I hadn't seen before. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. Suddenly, it all started to click. The late nights, the vague excuses, the little things she had brushed off as stress. I felt sick, caught between disbelief and heartbreak. My mind raced. I couldn't confront her right then, I needed to gather more information. I stepped back quietly, my heart pounding. The surprise party that had once filled me with joy now felt like a cruel joke. Instead of celebrating her, I was grappling with the disillusionment of our relationship. I returned to my car, taking deep breaths, trying to collect myself. This wasn't how I had imagined my day would go. As I sat there, grappling with what I had just witnessed, I knew I had to make a choice. I could either confront her now or wait, bide my time, and uncover the truth further. But one thing was certain, the surprise party I had envisioned was now overshadowed by a revelation that would change everything. I drove off, unsure of what the next chapter of my life would hold, but knowing that I had to find out just how deep the betrayal ran. Chapter 2, Gathering Evidence. The drive home was a blur of emotions. Anger, confusion, and heartache collided within me, making it hard to focus on the road. I parked in front of our house, still reeling from what I had seen. How could she? I had always believed we were solid, but now I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. I needed to understand what was happening before confronting her. I decided to play it cool and act as if everything was normal. I took a few deep breaths, reminding myself that I had a plan for the surprise party, and I could still use that to my advantage. When I walked through the front door, Laura greeted me with a bright smile. "Hey. You're back early. How was your shopping?" Good. I got some great decorations, I replied, forcing a smile back. I thought I'd try to surprise you with something special. Oh, you're so sweet. I can't wait to see what you've got. Her enthusiasm was genuine, and I felt a pang of guilt for what I was about to do. As she went to the kitchen to check on dinner, I slipped into our bedroom. I needed to find out if there was more to this. I rifled through her things, her purse, her phone. I hesitated, knowing it was an invasion of privacy, but desperation drove me. I picked up her phone, heart racing. It was locked, but I knew her passcode. After a few seconds of hesitation, I punched it in, and the screen lit up. I felt like I was trespassing in a sacred space. Scrolling through her messages, my heart sank deeper. There were flirty exchanges with Jake that made my stomach churn. Can't wait to see you later, one message read. Another read, you always know how to make me smile. They were subtle enough to look innocent, but I felt the weight of their implications. I moved on to her photos. My hands shook as I scrolled through images of work events, but then I found something that made my breath catch: pictures of her and Jake at a bar, laughing, their bodies close together. They had shared more than just work gossip, it was evident in the way they looked at each other. I quickly put her phone back, panic rising in my chest. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was piling up. This wasn't just a friendly relationship, it was something more. Just then, I heard Laura's footsteps approaching. I quickly gathered myself and walked back to the living room, trying to maintain my composure. She looked at me, a curious expression on her face. "Everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly. "Yeah, just thinking about the party," I replied, diverting the conversation. "I want it to be perfect for you." Her smile returned, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes: guilt. I couldn't be sure. We spent the rest of the evening preparing dinner and discussing the party, but my mind was elsewhere, trapped in a whirlwind of betrayal. That night, I lay awake, the darkness wrapping around me like a shroud. I replayed the images I'd seen, the laughter that felt like a dagger to my heart. I knew I needed to confront her, but how? I wanted proof, something undeniable that I could show her when the time came. The next morning, I devised a plan. I would watch her, follow her, and gather as much information as I could. I'd have to act normal while digging deeper into this deception. Laura was busy with work, and I knew she would have another late night ahead. I could use that time to uncover more. I felt like a detective in a bad movie, but I had to get to the bottom of this. As the days went by, I played the dutiful husband, all while meticulously tracking her movements. I found myself in places I never thought I'd go, waiting outside her office, hoping to catch her leaving with Jake, or looking at her calendar for suspicious appointments. Each piece of information I gathered only solidified my suspicions. The surprise party was creeping closer, and the excitement was lost on me. Instead of planning for joy, I was preparing for confrontation. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunted by secrets and lies. With each passing day, the emotional toll weighed heavier on my heart, but I couldn't back down. I needed the truth, no matter how painful it would be. And as I stood at the edge of this chaotic storm, I knew I had to brace myself for what was to come. The party would still go on, but it would be a very different kind of celebration, one that might just shatter everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. Chapter 3, The Trap is Set. The week leading up to the party felt like an eternity. Each day dragged on, filled with a mixture of mundane tasks and the relentless undercurrent of tension. I was living a double life, outwardly enthusiastic about the celebration while inwardly unraveling. I was determined to gather the evidence I needed to confront Laura and Jake, and I had a plan for how to do it. On Wednesday evening, I noticed Laura was unusually busy with work, often texting and getting calls late into the night. I seized the opportunity. I took a deep breath, knowing I needed to create a scenario that would force her into a corner. I decided to arrange a fake meeting with a friend, one that would take me out of the house during a time I knew she'd be seeing Jake. I texted my friend Alex, who was more than willing to help. "Let's meet at that cafe downtown. I'll be there at 7. Make it look good." As the day approached, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. I knew that if my plan worked, I might finally have the evidence I needed. The thought of confronting Laura was terrifying, but I reminded myself that it was necessary. On the night of the supposed meeting, I left the house early and parked a couple of blocks away. I watched our home, waiting for Laura to leave. She was supposed to be working late, but I had a nagging feeling that she would be meeting Jake instead. My heart raced as I saw her pull out of the driveway. I followed at a distance, careful not to draw attention to myself. The drive felt like an eternity, and I fought against the instinct to turn back. This was my chance. Laura drove to a trendy restaurant across town, a place I recognized from the photos she had shared on social media. I parked nearby, heart pounding, as I saw her step out of the car. My stomach dropped when I noticed Jake was already waiting for her at the entrance. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to witness. I slipped out of my car and quietly made my way toward the restaurant. The patio was decorated with string lights, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the chill creeping up my spine. I found a hidden spot near the edge of the patio, just out of sight. As I settled in, I couldn't believe I was actually doing this. I felt like an intruder in my own life, but the need for answers pushed me forward. Laura and Jake were seated at a small table in the corner, their body language intimate. I watched as they laughed together, leaning in close. A sharp pain shot through my chest when I saw her touch his arm, something she hadn't done with me in weeks. It felt like a betrayal, each shared laugh echoing in my mind like a taunt. I strained to hear their conversation, heart racing as I focused intently. The more I listened, the more my stomach churned. They spoke about work at first, but then the tone shifted. I caught snippets that sent shockwaves through me. "I can't believe how much fun we had last weekend," Laura said, her voice light. "You really know how to make me forget everything else." Jake leaned closer, a smirk on his face. "You deserve it. We all need to unwind sometimes. Just think about it, it's just us, no one else has to know." I felt a surge of anger mixed with heartbreak. It was as if I was losing my grip on reality. I struggled to hold back tears as I processed what I was hearing. They were not just friends, there was a clear intimacy in their words and gestures. As they finished their meal, I snapped a few pictures with my phone, capturing their smiles, the closeness, the undeniable connection between them. I knew this evidence would be vital when the time came to confront Laura. I had to show her that I wasn't just imagining things. After they finished eating, they left the restaurant together, and I followed at a safe distance. They walked to Jake's car, and my heart sank further as I saw them exchange a lingering hug before Laura climbed in. I pulled away, knowing I had seen enough. I returned home in a daze, the photos burning a hole in my pocket. The emotional weight of the evening settled heavily on my chest. I had what I needed, but I felt no sense of triumph, only the deep ache of betrayal. That night, as I lay in bed next to Laura, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. I turned on my side, staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening in my mind. How had we ended up here? I wanted to believe in the love we had built, but now it felt like a fragile facade. I had made a promise to myself, I would confront her on her birthday, during the surprise party. It would be the ultimate test of our relationship, a moment that could either heal us or shatter everything to pieces. As I drifted off to sleep, I knew I was about to step into a storm, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the fallout. But I couldn't back down now. The truth was out there, waiting to be unleashed. And soon, the party would begin. Chapter 4, The Day of Reckoning. The day of the surprise party dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil roiling inside me. I had spent the morning putting the final touches on the decorations, setting up the community center with balloons, streamers, and a large banner proclaiming "Happy Birthday, Laura." I wanted everything to look perfect, but every cheerful detail felt like a cruel irony. I checked the time, anxiety bubbling up within me. I had to keep my composure. I'd invited our closest friends, all eager to celebrate, but I couldn't shake the weight of what I had discovered. As I set up, I kept glancing at my phone, ensuring I had the photos ready. They were my proof, my lifeline when the moment of truth arrived. Laura had told me she would be at a brunch with her co-workers, which would give me just enough time to finalize everything and prepare for the surprise. I double-checked the timing of her return, knowing I had to make it perfect. As the hours passed, I felt the anticipation build, but it was a dark anticipation, one laced with dread. Around 3 p.m., I received a text from her. "On my way home. Can't wait to see what you've planned. Love you." The warmth of her message struck a nerve. Love. How could she say that when she was betraying me? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I needed to stay focused. I quickly sent a group text to our friends, letting them know to arrive at 4:30 p.m. sharp. The party would start at 5, and I wanted everyone ready to shout surprise when she walked in. At 4:15, I felt a surge of nerves as I glanced at the door. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. As the minutes ticked by, I felt the tension in the room build. I was surrounded by friends who were buzzing with excitement, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Then, the sound of the key turning in the lock jolted me. Laura walked in, a bright smile lighting up her face, blissfully unaware of the impending confrontation. "Surprise," we all shouted, and for a fleeting moment, her expression was pure joy. "Wow! You all did this for me," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. She was genuinely thrilled, and for a second, it was hard not to feel a pang of guilt about what I was about to do. As the evening progressed, laughter and music filled the air. I put on my best act, mingling with our friends, exchanging pleasantries while my mind raced. I made sure to keep the mood light, even as I prepared for the confrontation. But inside, I was calculating my every move, waiting for the right moment to pull her aside. Finally, after an hour of celebrations, it was time to cut the cake. As we gathered around, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was the moment of truth. After the cake was cut and everyone was enjoying their slices, I knew I had to make my move. "Hey, Laura," I said, motioning for her to step outside with me. She looked a bit puzzled but nodded, following me to the quieter patio area behind the community center. The laughter from our friends faded as we stepped into the cool evening air. "What's up? You seem a little serious," she said, brushing crumbs from her fingers. I hesitated, my heart pounding. "This was it. I need to talk to you about something important." Her expression shifted, a hint of concern etching across her face. "What is it? Is something wrong?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I saw you with Jake the other night." The color drained from her face, and for a moment, she looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" "I saw you at the restaurant. The way you were with him, it was more than just friends." I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos. The silence was deafening as her eyes scanned the images, her expression transforming from confusion to horror. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, but the words felt hollow. I could barely speak through the anger and hurt rising in my throat. "Explain what?" "How you two were laughing and touching. How you were having a great time while I was at home wondering where you were." Her eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't like that. We were just what? Just friends." Because it looked like more than that to me. Her silence was telling. I watched as she struggled to find the right words, and the weight of betrayal crashed down harder than ever. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far," she finally managed, her voice breaking. "It was just. I was feeling lost. Work has been so overwhelming, and Jake was there to listen." "Listen?" I echoed, disbelief pouring out of me. "You didn't just share your feelings, you crossed a line. You let him into a part of your life that should have been mine." The tears streamed down her face now, and I felt my heart crack even further. I wanted to feel rage, but instead, I felt an emptiness. "I thought we were happy," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong." I shook my head, the pain in my chest deepening. "You're right. You were wrong. You should have come to me instead of seeking comfort in someone else." As the realization settled between us, I knew this wasn't just about betrayal, it was about trust and the fabric of our relationship, now frayed and torn. I felt a mixture of sorrow and anger, but the way forward was unclear. "I don't know if we can come back from this," I said quietly, feeling the tears sting my own eyes. Laura's face fell, and in that moment, I realized that no matter how much I loved her, I couldn't ignore the betrayal. The party continued behind us, laughter and joy echoing through the night, but for us, the celebration was over. I turned away from her, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. The night that was meant to be a celebration of love had turned into a reckoning, and the storm I had been dreading had finally arrived. Chapter 5, The Aftermath. The laughter from inside the community center faded into the background, replaced by the weight of silence between Laura and me. I stood with my back to her, the air thick with unspoken words and shattered trust. I felt her presence, a mix of regret and desperation, but I couldn't bring myself to turn around. "Mark, please," she said softly, her voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was confused, and I made a terrible mistake." I finally turned to face her, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "Confused? That's not an excuse, Laura. You made a choice, one that has broken us." Her tears fell freely now, and I could see the pain in her eyes. But I felt as if I were in a fog, unable to see past my own heartbreak. "I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I replied, my voice cold. "You didn't just betray my trust, you betrayed the love we built together. How can we come back from that?" She stepped closer, desperation written all over her face. "I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything to make it right. I love you, Mark. I made a mistake with Jake, but it meant nothing compared to what we have." Her words felt like a double-edged sword. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the hope that we could somehow mend what was broken. But in that moment, the reality of what she had done loomed larger than my feelings. "I need time," I finally said, forcing myself to step back. "I can't just brush this off. I need to think about everything about us." The disappointment in her eyes was palpable, and it hurt me to see her like this. "You don't have to decide right now. We can talk about this later. Please, just don't walk away from me." But I felt as if the ground beneath us had cracked wide open. I didn't want to make any decisions in this moment of raw emotion. I turned and walked away from her, heading back toward the crowd inside. As I entered the community center, the vibrant energy hit me like a wave, a stark contrast to the heaviness in my chest. Friends were laughing, dancing, and enjoying the cake I had lovingly prepared for Laura. It felt surreal to be surrounded by joy when my world was crumbling. I forced a smile as I rejoined our friends, but inside, I felt numb. They chatted about memories, gifts, and plans for the future, none of which I could share in. I drifted to the edge of the room, watching the celebration unfold like a distant film. When Laura finally rejoined the group, her face was a mask of forced happiness, but I could see the sadness lurking beneath. I caught her eye once or twice, and each time, my heart ached a little more. We were both pretending, trapped in a moment that felt impossibly wrong. As the party began to wind down, I knew I had to make a choice. I gathered our friends for a toast, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. To Laura, I said, forcing a smile. Happy birthday. You deserve all the love and happiness in the world. Everyone cheered, raising their glasses, and I felt a pang of sadness wash over me. I was lying to them, to myself. I wasn't sure how to navigate this moment, or if I even wanted to. After the last guests left, I found myself alone with Laura again, the tension palpable in the quiet aftermath of the party. She stood in the living room, looking small and vulnerable amid the remnants of the celebration. Can we talk? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated but nodded, leading her to the couch. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our unspoken thoughts pressing down on us. Mark, I know I've ruined everything, she said, her voice trembling. But I want to fix this. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I looked at her, searching for the right words. Trust is hard to rebuild, Laura. I don't know if I can forgive you right now. Her expression fell, and I saw the glimmer of hope dim in her eyes. I understand. I don't want to lose you. I love you, and I'm so sorry for what happened. I took a deep breath, trying to find clarity in the storm of emotions. Love isn't just a word, Laura. It's about respect, loyalty, and honesty. You've broken that, and it's going to take time to heal. I know, she said, her voice choked with tears. I can't change the past, but I promise I'll do everything I can to make it up to you. I'll go to counseling, I'll do whatever it takes. Her desperation struck a chord, but I still felt lost. Counseling might help, but I don't want to rush into anything. I need to figure out if I can trust you again. Laura nodded, understanding the gravity of my words. I get it. I just want you to know how much you mean to me. I don't want to lose you without trying to fix this. The vulnerability in her voice tugged at my heart. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I felt paralyzed by my own pain. I need time to think, Laura. Time to process everything. She swallowed hard, tears streaming down her cheeks. Okay. I can give you that. Just, please don't shut me out. I won't, I replied, my voice softer now. But we need to be honest with each other about what this means. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the moment hanging heavily between us. I felt the reality of our relationship shifting, and I knew that nothing would be the same again. As I looked at her, I realized that while the love was still there, it was marred by a deep wound. Trust had been broken, and the road to healing would be long and difficult. Eventually, I stood up, needing space to breathe. I think I need some time alone to figure things out, I said gently. Laura nodded, her face a mix of sorrow and acceptance. I understand. I'll be here when you're ready. I walked away, leaving her in the living room, the remnants of the party a stark reminder of the love and trust that had been shattered. The night had promised celebration, but instead, it had become a turning point, one that would shape the future of our relationship in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. As I lay in bed that night, I felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. I didn't know what the next steps would be or if we could ever return to the love we once had. But I knew one thing, the journey ahead would require courage, honesty, and a willingness to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And as I closed my eyes, I hoped that somehow, we could find our way back to each other. Chapter 6, The Turning Point. The days following the party felt surreal. Each morning, I woke up to the same haunting reality, the remnants of our relationship lingering in the air like a ghost. Laura and I moved through the house like strangers, sharing the same space but feeling worlds apart. I busied myself with work and everyday chores, trying to distract myself from the pain, but it was always there, an unshakable weight on my chest. We had agreed to give each other space, but that only made the silence louder. I found myself replaying our last conversation, searching for clarity in the turmoil. I still loved her, but the image of her with Jake haunted me, a constant reminder of the betrayal. One evening, after another day filled with tension, I sat on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. Laura was in the kitchen, washing dishes, and the clinking of plates seemed to echo in the silence. I could sense her tension, too, and it only deepened my own. As I glanced up, I saw her through the doorway, her shoulders tense. The sight of her made my heart ache. I missed the laughter we used to share, the comfortable way we could be ourselves around each other. But now, everything felt forced and fragile. "Mark," she called softly, breaking the silence. "Can we talk?" I hesitated but nodded. "Sure." We sat down at the dining table, an uncomfortable distance between us. I could see the nervousness etched on her face, her eyes searching mine for any sign of hope. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, her voice trembling. "About us and what we need to do to move forward." I nodded, unsure of where this conversation would lead. "Okay. I know that I've hurt you deeply," she said, tears pooling in her eyes. "And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want to make things right. I'm willing to go to counseling, to work on myself. I want to understand why I made those choices." "I appreciate that, Laura," I said cautiously. "But it's not just about you working on yourself. I need to work on my own feelings too. I don't know if I'm ready for counseling yet." She nodded, taking a deep breath. "I get that. I just want you to know I'm here, ready to do the work if you are." Her sincerity struck a chord, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find a way back, but it would take time, patience, and a lot of hard conversations. "What do you think we should do next?" I asked, my voice steady. "Maybe we could start by being honest with each other about everything, our feelings, our fears. We need to rebuild the foundation of our relationship before we can even think about moving forward." I considered her words. "That sounds reasonable. But we also need to address the elephant in the room, Jake." Laura's face fell. "I know. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. I was foolish and selfish." "Do you still have feelings for him?" I asked, my heart racing as I spoke the words I dreaded. "No," she replied quickly, her voice firm. "I promise. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. What I felt for him was never real. I was just lost, and he was there." "Lost?" I echoed, grappling with the notion. "You had me. I was here, supporting you through everything." "I know," she whispered, her eyes filled with regret. "And I don't expect you to understand why I did it. I'm still trying to understand it myself. I just want to focus on us now." Her honesty was refreshing, but it didn't take away the sting of betrayal. I had so many questions swirling in my mind, but I also felt a flicker of determination to make this work. "If we're going to move forward, I need to see that you're truly committed to repairing this. I need to know that you're willing to fight for us." "I will," she said, her voice resolute. "I want to fight for us, Mark. I love you. I always have." The sincerity in her words tugged at my heart, and I felt the walls I had built around myself beginning to crack. But I knew I had to be careful, I had to protect myself while navigating this new reality. "Okay," I said slowly. "Let's take it one step at a time. We can start by talking more openly about our feelings and setting boundaries, especially regarding Jake." Laura nodded eagerly, hope shining in her eyes. Yes. I can tell him that we need to limit our contact. I won't let him come between us again. Good, I replied, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. And I think it might help if we each have some individual time, too. We need to figure out what we want from this relationship moving forward. Agreed, she said, her expression serious. I'll make an appointment for counseling, both for myself and for us. I want to show you that I'm committed to healing. As we sat there, a tentative connection began to form, a flicker of hope amidst the ashes of our relationship. I realized that rebuilding trust would take time, but we were willing to put in the effort. I know it's going to be hard, I said, my voice softer now. But if we're going to make this work, we need to be honest and open with each other, no more secrets. I promise, she replied, reaching for my hand. I hesitated for a moment, but then I took hers, feeling a spark of connection. It was a small step, but it felt significant. As we sat in that moment of tentative hope, I realized that while the road ahead would be challenging, it was a road we could walk together if we both committed to it. Trust would take time to rebuild, but the love we had wasn't gone, it was just buried under the weight of betrayal. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the possibility of healing beginning to take root. Chapter 7, A New Beginning. The next few weeks were a delicate dance of honesty and vulnerability. Laura and I began to open up in ways we hadn't before, sharing our fears and insecurities about the relationship. Each conversation was a small step forward, yet the road ahead felt steep and uncertain. Laura took the initiative to seek counseling for herself and arranged for us to attend couples therapy together. I admired her determination, even as I struggled with my own feelings of betrayal. The idea of sitting in a therapist's office, dissecting our relationship, filled me with anxiety. But deep down, I knew it was a necessary step. Our first counseling session arrived, and I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. The therapist, Dr. Rivera, greeted us with a warm smile, her calm demeanor instantly putting me at ease. She guided us through the process, encouraging open communication and active listening. Let's start by talking about what brought you both here today, she said, her voice soothing. Laura spoke first, her voice shaking slightly. I've made mistakes, and I've hurt Mark. I want to understand why I did what I did and how we can move forward. I listened, feeling a strange mix of pride and pain as she took responsibility for her actions. I knew it wasn't easy for her to open up like this. Dr. Rivera turned to me. And how do you feel about Laura's actions and the state of your relationship? I took a deep breath, finding my voice. It's been really hard for me to process everything. I feel betrayed and confused. I love her, but I struggle with trusting her again. Those feelings are valid, Dr. Rivera said gently. Trust is a fragile thing, and it will take time to rebuild. But acknowledging your feelings is an important step. As we continued to share our thoughts and feelings, I felt the barriers I had erected slowly begin to dissolve. Talking about the betrayal was painful, but it was necessary. Each session revealed layers of our relationship that we had previously ignored, and it felt liberating to express what we truly felt. Over the next few weeks, we continued attending therapy, and with each session, we peeled back the layers of our emotions. I learned more about Laura's struggles and the pressures she had faced at work, which had contributed to her moment of weakness. One evening after therapy, we returned home, both feeling emotionally drained but hopeful. I didn't expect that to feel so freeing, Laura said, collapsing onto the couch. Me neither, I admitted. I thought it would be all anger and blame, but it was nice to finally talk openly. She nodded, her expression serious. I want to keep this momentum going. I want to keep talking and being honest with each other. I looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. I do too. It feels good to communicate, even if it's hard. We began implementing small changes in our daily routine, setting aside time each week to check in with each other about how we were feeling. It became our relationship hour, a sacred time to be open and honest without distractions. During one of those evenings, I decided to bring up the topic of Jake. "I think we need to talk about him again," I said, my stomach nodding at the thought. Laura looked down, her fingers fidgeting. "Yeah, I've been thinking about it too. I think it would help if you set clear boundaries with him. It's hard for me to feel secure when I know he's still in the picture." "I understand," she replied, meeting my gaze. "I've already limited our contact. I don't want to risk what we're rebuilding. I promise, I'll let him know that I need space." Her commitment felt reassuring, but I also knew it was a process. "I appreciate that, Laura. I just need to see that you're truly dedicated to making this work." "I am," she said earnestly. "I'm committed to you and to us." As the weeks turned into months, we began to see signs of progress. The connection we had shared, while battered, began to grow stronger. We laughed together again, shared stories, and found comfort in each other's company. I started to believe that healing was possible. One Saturday afternoon, we decided to take a hike at a nearby nature reserve. The fresh air and beautiful surroundings were invigorating, and it felt good to step away from our usual routines. As we walked, we talked about everything: our dreams, our favorite memories, and what we wanted for the future. "I've missed this," I said, glancing at her as we reached a scenic overlook. The view was breathtaking, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "Me too," she replied, a soft smile gracing her lips. "I want to create new memories, better ones." I smiled back, feeling the warmth of her presence. "I want that too. I want us to be stronger than we were before." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape, I took her hand in mine. "No matter what happens, I'm willing to fight for us, Laura." Her eyes sparkled with unshed tears, and she squeezed my hand. "And I'll fight too. I love you, Mark. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm committed to making this right." In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We were on a journey, and while it wouldn't be easy, I believed we could emerge from this stronger and more connected. The path to rebuilding trust was still rocky, but we were walking it together one step at a time. As we headed back down the trail, I realized that love was not just about the good times, it was about weathering the storms and emerging on the other side, hand in hand. And for the first time in a long while, I felt optimistic about what lay ahead. Chapter 8, Facing the Past. As the weeks passed, Laura and I continued to navigate the complexities of rebuilding our relationship. Each day felt like a step forward, but there were also moments that pulled me back, reminding me of the hurt and betrayal I had experienced. The journey was far from linear, it felt more like a winding path filled with unexpected turns. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, we returned home feeling both exhausted and relieved. The session had forced us to confront deeper issues: my feelings of inadequacy, Laura's struggles with her self-worth, and how those intertwined with the events that had transpired. Sitting on the couch, I turned to Laura, feeling the weight of what we just discussed. "I think it's time we address something that's been on my mind," I said cautiously. "Okay, what is it?" she asked, her tone encouraging but wary. "I think we need to talk about Jake again. I need to know that you're fully committed to putting this behind us, and that means being transparent about any interactions you have with him moving forward." Laura nodded, her expression serious. "I agree. I don't want anything to come between us, and I'll do whatever it takes to reassure you. I just need to understand that you're fully aware of how this affects me," I continued. "I don't want to feel like I'm always looking over my shoulder. I promise I'll be open and honest. I haven't spoken to him since we set those boundaries, and I don't intend to. I'm focused on us," she said earnestly. "Good. I just want to feel secure again, I admitted. I don't want to feel like I'm living in fear of losing you. Laura reached for my hand, her touch warm and comforting. You're not going to lose me, Mark. I'm here, and I want to build a future together. Feeling a sense of relief wash over me, I took a deep breath. Okay, then let's work on building that future. But I think we should also consider setting some new traditions, ways to reconnect and strengthen our bond. I love that idea, she said, her eyes lighting up. What do you have in mind? Well, I thought we could start a weekly date night where we do something fun together, just the two of us. And maybe we could also explore new hobbies or interests. What do you think? That sounds perfect, she exclaimed, enthusiasm radiating from her. I've missed those little moments we used to share. We spent the next hour brainstorming ideas for our date nights. We settled on trying new restaurants, taking dance lessons, and even exploring the nearby art scene. It felt good to focus on the future, and for the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. As we planned, I realized that our relationship was becoming more than just a response to the betrayal. It was an opportunity to redefine what we had. We were no longer the same couple we had been before, we were evolving, learning to communicate in ways we hadn't before. The following week, we had our first official date night. We decided to try a cozy Italian restaurant that had just opened downtown. As we sat across from each other, the atmosphere buzzing with laughter and clinking glasses, I felt a warmth spread through me. This feels nice, I said, looking into her eyes. Really nice, Laura replied, her smile genuine. It's like we're rediscovering each other. We shared stories, laughed over shared memories, and for a moment, the heaviness of our past felt lighter. I could see glimpses of the love we had once shared, and it filled me with hope. After dinner, we decided to take a stroll along the river, the soft glow of streetlights reflecting off the water. The night was beautiful, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. Thank you for tonight, I said, pausing to look at her. It means a lot to me. I'm just as grateful, she replied, her voice soft. I want us to keep creating these moments. As we walked, I found myself thinking about how far we had come. The road was still rocky, but each step felt like progress. But as much as I wanted to focus on the positive, a nagging thought kept creeping back into my mind. I needed closure on the situation with Jake. I needed to know for certain that Laura had cut ties completely. The following week, during our therapy session, I decided to address it directly. I've been feeling a bit unsettled about Jake, I began, my heart racing. I think I need to know that you've taken final steps to distance yourself from him. Laura looked at me, her brow furrowing. I thought we agreed that I'd let him know I needed space. I know, I said, struggling to keep my tone even. But I think it would help me to hear that you've had a final conversation with him about it. Dr. Rivera nodded, guiding the conversation. Laura, how do you feel about addressing this directly? I understand why Mark feels that way, Laura replied, looking thoughtful. I did text him, but I didn't have a face-to-face conversation. I can do that. Could you set up a time to meet him? I suggested, my heart pounding. I just need to know it's really over. I can do that, she agreed, her voice steady. I'll make sure it's clear that I'm moving on and that there's no chance of us reconnecting. Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with anxiety. I knew this was a necessary step for both of us, but the thought of her meeting with him still made my stomach churn. After the session, I felt a sense of urgency to address my feelings. Can I come with you? I asked, surprising even myself. Laura looked at me, surprise written across her face. You want to come? Yeah. I think it would help me to hear you tell him, and it might provide closure for both of us. She considered it, her expression softening. If that's what you need, I'd be okay with you being there. Great, I said, feeling a mix of apprehension and relief. We agreed to set a date for the meeting, and I hoped it would provide the clarity I needed to move forward. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a knot of tension in my stomach. As we drove to the cafe where we had agreed to meet Jake, I glanced at Laura, who was nervously twisting her hands in her lap. "You've got this," I said, trying to reassure her. "Just be honest and direct." She nodded, but her expression was still tense. "I'm ready. I just want to put this behind us." As we pulled into the cafe parking lot, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around us. "Just remember that this is for us. You're taking a step toward rebuilding our trust." With that, we stepped out of the car and walked inside. Jake was already seated at a table, looking casual and relaxed. My stomach twisted as I caught sight of him, a reminder of the pain I had felt. Laura and I exchanged a glance before she walked over to him, and I followed closely behind, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hey," she said, her voice steady but low. "Hey, Laura." "Mark," Jake acknowledged, a hint of surprise crossing his face. "Can we talk?" Laura said, her gaze unwavering. I took a seat next to her, feeling the tension crackle in the air. I watched as she took a deep breath, preparing to say the words that would hopefully mark a turning point in our journey. "Jake, I need to be honest with you," she began, her voice clear. "What happened between us was a mistake. I let my feelings cloud my judgment, and I've hurt someone I love deeply." I felt a surge of pride at her courage, but my heart raced as I anticipated his response. "I didn't mean to complicate things," Jake replied, his tone neutral. "I thought we were just having fun." "That's exactly it. It was fun, but it was also wrong. I need you to understand that I'm choosing to focus on my marriage now," Laura said firmly. I watched as Jake's expression shifted, the realization sinking in. "So, that's it? You're just done?" "Yes," Laura replied, her voice unwavering. "I need to make it clear that there's nothing left between us. I'm fully committed to Mark, and I'm moving on." Jake nodded slowly, looking taken aback. "Okay, I get it. I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't mean to come between you." With those final words, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Laura had said what needed to be said, and I hoped it would bring us the closure we both needed. As we left the cafe, I turned to Laura, my heart racing with relief. "You did it. I'm proud of you." She smiled, a mixture of relief and determination on her face. "Thank you for being there with me. It felt good to finally say it. Now we can focus on us," I said, feeling a renewed sense of hope. "Absolutely," she replied, squeezing my hand. "I'm ready to move forward." In that moment, I realized that while the path ahead would